Hey, welcome to my weekly live stream. I'm Christine Weber. I love to support mature yoga teachers. Today I'm going to be talking about Hashimoto's disorder and how yoga has been supportive for me. So I'm not talking about this from a medical perspective. I want to make that clear. I'm not a a licensed provider. I'm just talking about it from my own experience. So, and the reason I'm doing that is because so many women have autoimmune challenges. And I hope it can be helpful for you if you're navigating it or if you know people who are navigating various autoimmune issues. So I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's when I was in my early 30s. And I was dealing with a lot of fatigue. I had actually spent 4 years living in Asia, and I struggled a lot with digestive issues when I was in Asia. I actually had a sort of a parasite, I guess you could say, but not really. It was this, like, I had the wrong kind of flora in my intestines from how I had grown up, and it took about more than 15 years to get the diagnosis, actually. So I was dealing with irritable bowel syndrome for many, many years. And during that time, I also got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I did not treat it with any kind of medication at that time because I had this belief that I could do it with herbal supplements and yoga poses. And I did a lot of that. I spent a lot of time doing yoga. I spent a lot of time exploring different remedies. I even studied homeopathy for 3 years, thinking that could help me. I did a lot. And eventually, as I started to roll into menopause, I realized that, perimenopause, I realized that it wasn't working. Like, I was so exhausted all the time and dealing with just the energy suck of it and the exhaustion, the depression. Like, there's so many different parts of having live thyroid that affect your whole system. Inflammation, digestive issues. It was pretty bad. So I have this wonderful integrative medicine doctor here in Asheville. His name's Dr. Brian Lewis, and he's a good friend also. He's a yogi, interested in all of the ancient wisdom traditions. And so Brian was really kind to me, and he said, look, I know you've been trying really hard to do this for so long, and you've done a pretty good job. And he's like, but I just want you to feel better. And, it was like a lot of tears, because I knew if I started that route, I was going to be on medication for the rest of my life. I learned things later. Like, eventually what happens with Hashimoto's is you start to get like holes in the thyroid. So it means that it's really incapable of healing at some point. At least that's what the doctors say, right? And I love my doctors and have been, and I'm not an expert. So that's what they explained to me, is like, you get to a point, if you catch it early, maybe there's things you can do to reduce the symptoms and even heal your thyroid. But I was going for years and years. Another big piece of the problem, of course, is the healthcare system in the United States. So here I was, an independent yoga teacher. I was doing shiatsu massage at the time. So I was living pretty low to the ground for many, many, many years. My husband's a psychotherapist. He sometimes would have insurance because he'd sometimes be working at an agency, but often not. He didn't have insurance. So it was very difficult to be able to afford the proper diagnosis that I needed, and then to get the care that I needed. It took about 15 years. It was because of one of my dear friends, Marek Sawicki, who's also an Ayurvedic practitioner. And he said to me, you seemed like you might have the symptoms of what's called blastocystis that you might have gotten when you spent all that time in India and Asia. And it turned out that was exactly what I had. And it was kind of like a miracle because I got tested. Yes, I had excessive blastocystis in my intestines. And the thing is that often doctors will see blastocystis and say, oh, it's just a normal intestinal flora or fauna. But other physicians have disputed that. So what the miracle part was that I went to this functional medicine doctor. He was very expensive, but I went to him. He lives in Asheville, and it turns out he's the one who developed the protocol around the specific thing I had. And so he treated me for that with a very expensive medication, but it worked. And, you know, I had for 15, 17 years almost, I had IBS, and getting treated for that, it was just like, it was a miracle. But the problem was that at the same time, the Hashimoto's was intersecting with perimenopause and getting worse. So I had to start treating the Hashimoto's. Everything got better. You know, my digestion got better, my sleep got better, everything improved as I started treating it. And I've been through quite a lot of physicians, really a journey of finding the right treatments for me, like specific for what I needed, you know, and lots of fits and starts. And I'm not finished, you know, like I'm not fixed, you know, I still have flares, which is why I started this live stream in the first place. Why I wanted to talk about it is that I've been in a Hashimoto's flare for almost 2 weeks now. I've been dealing with it. So what happens to me when I go into a flare is I get a generalized inflammation in my body. I get stiffness and soreness in my joints, as well as my muscles. I get digestion issues. I get more gas and bloating. And then I also get really very disrupted sleep, very difficult to sleep, and kind of a cranked up autonomic nervous system. So why am I telling you all this? So one of the reasons I shared this is that, first of all, I used to have this idea, I used to have this thought that if you were going to be a yoga teacher, you better have your shit together. You know, you better have your act, sorry. So sometimes, I'm from New Jersey, sometimes that happens. So, like, you better have your act together, you know, and you better be healthy, and you better be thin, and you better be flexible, like get it together, you know. So I came to yoga teaching with that kind of ridiculous idea in my head. And the more I observed what was going on in the yoga communities, you know, I live in Asheville, so it's in North Carolina, it's very yoga centric kind of place. And there was a lot of spiritual bypassing, there it still is, but I observed a lot of what was going on in this community of people, yoga teachers standing in front, being perfect, and really like they had all sorts of stuff going on too, but the veneer was perfection. And it's just so hurtful. It's harmful to come across like you've figured it all out as a yoga teacher. It's harmful for the teaching, for the community of teachers. It's harmful for your students. And what happens is it creates shadow, and the shadow stuff starts to rear its ugly head in, for example, all of the scandals that we've seen, especially in the Western world, but in India to some extent too, amongst these great yoga teachers, you know. So I decided I did not want to participate in that inauthenticity. I decided I wanted to be authentic with my students, and I want to be upfront about the struggles that I face, you know, the struggles that I face largely with my health that I faced for years. So in the middle of this flare, last night I was not sleeping well. Can you tell my vata's a little deranged? But anyway, it was not a good sleep night. And it was around 12 o'clock, and I still hadn't fallen asleep. So I got out of bed. I took some Triphala. That's been very helpful for me. The other thing that's been very helpful is enteric-coated peppermint oil, and that's actually, there's some good research on that for IBS. So I took some Triphala. in a little warm water. It's like sour dirt. It's really disgusting, but it helps my stomach. So I took some of that, drank a little bit of warm water, and then it's so kind of special to be up at night in some ways, especially around that time. It's like I was looking at the stars for a while and how beautiful they were, and just how quiet everything was. And then I went to my mat and I spent about 15 minutes just doing a practice that I know it can be helpful, the things I know that are specifically helpful for digestion, for your Jata Agni, increasing Jata Agni. Did a little bit of pranayama for calming the nervous system and some of the anxiety I was dealing with, and then I slipped back into bed and I slept for 7 hours, which wasn't terrible for me. It would have been nice to fall asleep earlier, but to be able to, and by the way, it doesn't always work that way. It's not always so magical. But last night it was really good, and I could just like take things down a notch, have a lot of compassion for myself and what I've been through, and then use the practices to get what I needed, which was some decent rest. So anyway, a few things that have been helpful for me. Yes, the triphala, the enteric-coated peppermint oil. I do other stuff, like I take medication for my thyroid. I take a pure encapsulation thyroid formula, it's called thyroid support. I take that. I take selenium. I eat a few Brazil nuts every day for the selenium. I have to be really careful with my diet so that I'm not triggering inflammation. So like, low FODMAPs is helpful. If you don't know what FODMAPs are, you can look that up, FODMAP. I try and like get a little lower on the FODMAPs there. And being careful to not snack too much so my digestion can work properly, all that stuff. And then yoga, right? So, and I think we often come to these practices when we need them. We find these practices when we need them. I'm grateful in many ways that I'm super grateful for yoga. I get resentful and grumpy about having Hashimoto's and any of the other health things I've dealt with, but I'm very grateful because it helps me relate to people. And the journey of chronic health is one of lots of ups and downs, lots of mental, emotional ups and downs too. But it is one of, if you're open to it, it's a learning experience, just like life, right? Anyway, I hope this is helpful for you in some ways. Please leave a comment. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Take care.